Hello, everybody. Today we're doing a sheetrock install on a wall. They closed in a Arcadia double door. They got it all framed and insulated, so they called us out here to do 2 sheets of sheetrock. Pretty easy. It's kind of tight in a corner, working by a tile fireplace and another wall. Small job like this one guy could do, but we're just both gonna hang the sheetrock and help each other out here. 2 sheets. Some people like to start with the bottom sheet, but this one we wanted to kick it up, do the top, and it's about a 7 foot by 8 foot area, so we just had to cut off a piece of the sheetrock. Get it all hung. We're going to do the top piece first, kind of tighten this corner next to the tile fireplace. Corner of the fireplace here is kind of bulging out, so it's really tight to get it in there, but we got it to fit. If your sheetrock's really tight, sometimes you have to cut it back or rasp it back in the tight areas. Cut it back with a razor blade, use a rasp, whatever it takes to make it fit. If there's small gaps, no problem. You can always pre-fill them, tape over the gaps. We can get these sheets hung. I'm going to add plenty of screws. I like to do screws every 4 inches, make sure everything's nice and tight. Sometimes you want to mark your studs. If you don't know where your stud placement is, mark them either on the ceiling or the floor, so that way you know where to put some screws. Every 4 inches, nice and tight. On this one, we have like a 45 off angle on the top angle, so we're just going to use a paper tape instead of using a mesh. Paper tape's always preferred for angles, 90-degree angles, so we're going to use paper tape. I'm basically just going to roll out the length of the paper tape so I know how long it is to cut. It's easier to have this ready to go before I mix up mud and spend time putting down the pan, putting down the knife to cut my tape. So it's pretty much ready to go. I'm going to do the angles in paper tape, but the regular joint I'm just going to do with a fiberglass mesh tape. Fiberglass mesh tape is always preferred on jobs like this, repairs. You necessarily wouldn't do paper tape on all the joints unless this was a larger project where you're just going to do taping for the day to let it set up the next day. But since we're going to finish this in one trip, I'm just going to do the angles real quick using a quick set mud and then just follow through on the joint with the fiberglass mesh tape. We're going to be using a quick set mud. I don't recommend everybody out there to use a quick set mud. This is more professional grade material. I have to use quick set muds because I have to finish these jobs in one trip. But if this is a project you're doing yourself, you would just use an all-purpose joint compound. All-purpose joint compounds, once you put them on, they have to dry overnight before you can sand, second coat, let them dry, sand, and then do another coat. So it's more time consuming with the joint compound, but they're easier to work with because if you make a mistake with the joint compound, at least you can sand away your mistake. These quick set hot muds, once they set up like a cement, so they're harder to work with. Even though on the bags of hot muds it says it's an easy sand, we don't like to sand these hot muds. If you do sand a hot mud, you're really going to have to sand it. You'd probably be easier trying to sand a rock down because that's how strong it is. It sets up like a cement. So we do a slick out technique. You'll see on the videos, a lot of my repair videos, we do slick out techniques before the hot mud's fully set up. Like this is a 5-minute mud, so it's going to set up between the 4 to 6 minute mark. So before it sets up, you have to slick it out with a 6-inch knife and a wet sponge, basically manipulating the material, taking off the excess material, basically getting rid of edges. I'd compare it to like a wet sanding technique, and just doing this over and over is the only way to perfect this technique. This is only done with hot muds, quick set muds, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and 90-minute hot muds. If you're using joint compounds, you don't do this slick out technique. You would just actually sand in between coats, and then you can dedust the walls with a damp sponge, wet sponge, take out the dust, and then follow through with a second coat or third coat. We're just going to get everything here coated 2 times, slicked out, and then we're going to follow through with this spray knockdown. This is a heavier spray knockdown, so we're going to spray it heavy using the the bigger tip on the hopper. There's different types of knockdowns, of course. There's light knockdowns, mediums, heavies. So depending on the how busy the texture is, the mud may have to be thicker. So the heavier the texture, the thicker the mud, of course. And then you just got to spray your pattern out. Nice, consistent, symmetrical patterns when you spray, keeping the same consistent air pressure coming out of your spray machine. So if your air compressor that's pushing it isn't keeping up, you're going to have to slow down or maybe take a break and keep that air pressure up. That's why we use these bigger air compressors that can keep up with us as we're spraying. But yeah, basic video, just getting it all repaired. Going to do a spray knockdown. We're going to get it all knocked down. Also, you're going to see I'm using a 6-inch knife to knock down. This is a smaller area. I know there's a lot of knives out there, special knockdown knives, big 20-inch knives. Those are fine if you're doing huge whole ceilings where you can just go and run with the knockdown. But with these smaller jobs, it's easier to use a 6-inch knife. The 6-inch knife is probably the straightest knife you're going to have on hand. And also you have control. When you do a knockdown, you're not pushing down, you're not putting down pressure. You're literally just gliding the knife over this splatter texture that you did, the spray, and it's knocking it down. I've seen really light knockdowns where they don't even knock them down at all. They just let them dry overnight and then they turn around and sand it, and then sanding it will give it that knockdown effect. But with this, I'm just using a 6-inch knife. Everybody out there probably is going to criticize, but I've been doing this a long time, doing repair work. And trust me, the 6-inch knife gives you the best look. You don't get flat spots from your knives. Bigger knives always have curves. So a 6-inch knife, it is time consuming on repair work, but it always gives you the best look. Of course, if I'm spraying a whole ceiling, hundreds of square feet or so, I'm not going to use a 6-inch knife. Then I'd use a bigger knife. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Just getting 2 sheets hung here, tape, coated 2 times with the spray texture. Easy, easy, easy job. Probably anyone could do it yourself. If you couldn't do all the steps, at least you can see some of the steps involved, and maybe you can attempt to do something here before you hire a professional, maybe to save $1. If I came to this job and they already had this sheetrock hung, it would have saved them a few bucks. So just simple steps like that you can probably do yourself on your project. At least get the area prepped, clean, ready, materials on site, stuff like that can help you bring down the costs on your project that you're trying to do. But if you haven't done it already, please go ahead and like this video. Also subscribe if you haven't done so, and thanks for viewing.